Hello and welcome, everyone, to another episode of Last Week in Quantum. I'm your host, Bill Roth, self-proclaimed Silicon Valley marketing genius. This is the show where we review the week's news in the world of quantum computing and its impact on the world of cybersecurity, AI, and more. This week, with us is, as always, my esteemed colleague, Brandon Dennis, Director of Operations. Brandon, welcome.
Hey, Bill.
And new to the show, Q-Secure's own Pat Shore, FedOps Program Manager. Welcome, Pat.
Hey, good to be here, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Great to have a new color commentator on board. Welcome to you both. This week, we have a number of stories. There's a cryptography story, we have some legislation, and also some cool physics. So let's get started. So, Brandon, I believe there was a piece on the maturation of post-quantum cryptography. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, we had Cloudflare announcing they hit a major milestone after 6 years in the making. They're starting to roll out general availability of post-quantum cryptography support to their customers, services, and internal systems. Pat Shore, the quantum resilient cryptography industry is it's heating up.
Yeah, this is really exciting stuff, and we're glad to see that these big companies and these cloud infrastructure providers are taking this PQC transition seriously. And we're excited to see that I think a lot more companies, the likes of Google and Microsoft, are going to follow suit and start taking this transition to quantum resilience a lot more seriously. It's going to take a whole bipartisan and group effort on behalf of the federal government and private industry to make this transition happen. We're looking at the most comprehensive transition in cryptography history. So this is a really good sign. And I'd look for more articles coming out about these other big tech companies following suit with some more GA releases.
Excellent. I think the key message here is if you're a big company and you haven't talked about post-quantum cryptography or PQC, time to get FOMO and deal with it.
Exactly.
Pat sort of tipped his hand here. We talked about bipartisanship, and bipartisanship is not dead in Washington. This week, Representatives Jeff Jackson out of Michigan and Claudia Tenney introduced, Jeff Jackson's out of North Carolina, a bipartisan post-quantum cybersecurity standards act. Brandon, give us the rundown.
The Bipartisan Post-Quantum Cybersecurity Standards Act. From the article, I pulled a really good quote from Congresswoman Tenney here. It says, as we enter the era of quantum computing, it's imperative that we stay ahead of our adversaries who may exploit this technology to break our encryption. The Post-Quantum Cybersecurity Standards Act reinforces our commitment to post-quantum cryptography while supporting research in the United States to ensure we maintain our leadership in the field of cybersecurity. Pat, we've got a timeline now of all of the new bills, laws, legislations, and memos coming off the Hill. I know you've been following that closely too.
Yeah, this is really exciting to see. These bipartisan acts, it's really great and refreshing to see, both sides coming together about these important issues. And if you recall, the HR 7535, which was the Quantum Computing Cybersecurity Preparedness Act, was also a bipartisan bill. So that's really exciting to see that this has traction on both sides, and they're taking recognition that this is a serious issue because it's going to take both sides of the panel in order to make this transition happen. It's going to be a huge upcycle, and the lead times for this of the last NIST transition was about 7 years. NSA has quoted in saying that these PQC standards should be fully implemented within the next 10 years. But experts in the industry are looking at a lot shorter of windows and encouraging, and when I mean experts, I mean both federal and private, are encouraging government organizations and commercial organizations to start aggressively testing solutions that are already in the field. And certainly that's one way that we want to accelerate these timelines and these transitions, because although NSA is saying 2035 everything will be implemented, we want to be well ahead of that timeline.
Excellent. For those of you paying attention, go to congress.gov, great website, type in the word quantum and then select legislation. You'll see this is HR 5759. Subscribe to that, and you'll notice we have the initial text, and it's coming shortly. And as Pat said, it's great to see some bipartisanship. A lot of groups out there doing that these days, including my friends at withhonor.org. Shout out to folks trying to bring people together and heal the divide. So finally, let's talk physics. Interesting article out of the Stanford Engineering Magazine on a quantum entanglement. Brandon, tell us a little more.
Yeah, actually, a podcast out of Stanford, The Future of Quantum Mechanics, Unraveling Entanglement Secrets. I had physicist Monica Shalier Smith explaining the complexities of quantum entanglement and why scientists are so keen to understand and control this elusive phenomenon. Pat, as our resident physicist on the call, what does that mean?
Yeah, as a physics major, I love to see these types of articles. I went to Claremont McKenna, but we have some Stanford alums at Q-Secure, so it's good to see Stanford, pulling their piece as well. So it's a really interesting article. They give some great in-depth information. I'd highly recommend you check it out. What really excites me about entanglement is the applications of it. So at a high level, quantum entanglement refers to the quantum characteristics of subatomic particles and their ability to transmit information instantaneously across basically infinite distances. And I air quote transferring information because they don't actually transfer information. It's an intrinsic property of these subatomic particles that when a measurement is taken on one of these particles, necessarily you determine the measurement or the outcome of the other particle. So that's why these particles are referred to as entangled. The state of one intrinsically determines the state of the other. Now, this allows for a lot of really interesting things. The article breaks down three main applications: quantum computing, quantum sensing, and quantum communications.
Moreover, I think we're going to probably ask you to write all this down in a blog for qsecure.com. So thank you very much, Pat, for that rundown. Folks, that wraps it up for today's show. You can find the links to these articles in our show notes. And if you want to join our mailing list for our weekly news summary, you can go to our LinkedIn page and join our newsletter mailing list. Go to linkedin.com, type in QSecure, that's QUSECURE, and sign up for the mailing list on the LinkedIn platform. This show has been brought to you by Q-Secure. Q-Secure, your quantum security problem solved. Did you know the bad actors in nation states are collecting your encrypted data today so they can decrypt it when a large enough quantum computer comes around? Q-Secure can help with that. For more information, check out QSecure.com or call us at 650-356-8001. That's QUSECURE.com. That's right, qsecure.com, 650-356-8001. So before we do the sign-off, I'll say that's all for today's show. I'm your host, Bill Roth, and with us this week has been Brandon Dennis, Director of Operations, and Pat Shore, Fed Operations Program Manager. Thanks for joining us both.
It's great to be with you guys today. Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
The show was produced by Trina Mabunai. Our managing producer is Mr. Paul Fruchtner. The show was written by Brandon Dennis, Bill Roth, with help from said Trina Mabunai. Our chief researcher is Ms. Jenna Mitchell. And of course, our founder, fearless leader, and director, of course, is Rebecca Crothammer. We'll see you next week on Last Week in Quantum.